Today I'll be interviewing Bobby Logue, the artistic director at the Big Arts Strauss Theatre here on Sanibel. Make sure you get future updates. I plan to upload a new video every week, so please like and subscribe this channel so you can be updated. To help me get to my goal of 1,500 subscribers, I'll be having a drawing for a limited edition island print. To enter the giveaway, all you need to do is subscribe and then send an email to nick@nickadamsphotography.com saying, I subscribed. I will announce the winner at the end of every new episode. Good luck and enjoy this episode. Welcome to Sanibel and Captiva's original podcast, The Insider's Guide to the Islands. I'll be chatting with island experts from fishing guides to shellers to local personalities. I aim to get the insider information to make your island experience incredible. All right, so hello everyone. We're here today with Bobby from Big Arts Strauss Theatre. And welcome to podcast number 1, Bobby.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully it's a long line of podcasts that we're going to be doing.
I'm excited.
So tell us a bit about your background. How did you end up in Sanibel or on Sanibel?
About, I guess, 22 years ago, I auditioned for a gentleman named J.T. Smith, who used to run the theater here that was called the Schoolhouse Theater in New York City.
Remember him well. Yeah.
And I came down here to do a show, and that evening when I arrived, they invited me to see the show that was currently running. And actually, my best friend growing up was one of the stars of the show, Victor Legretta. And
yes.
I just knew that my life was going to be forever intertwined with the Sanibel community.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And what year was that? When did you move down?
I didn't move here until a little bit later, but I started working on the island in the theater in 1998.
1998. Okay, that was about a year before I moved from England. So I moved here in 1999, and I must have met you there soon after. Yeah. Yeah, because I remember Victor well, and Victor's still around, obviously, doing theatre. And so where are you from originally? You're from?
I'm a Long Island kid.
Long Island kid, okay.
Long Island in New York.
Okay, and for those of you that don't know, Victor and Bobby have been long-time theatre people here. Obviously, even Victor way before you, I think, wasn't he?
Yes, actually, Victor grew up in the same town as me. We were in the same grade, and he moved down here with his family when I think he was 18.
Gotcha.
So he was here probably a good 5 or 6 years before I was hired to come down and work at the Schoolhouse Theater.
Right, and he actually had a spell running the theatre as well?
Yes, actually, he took over for J.T. Smith after J.T. Smith retired, and then when Big Arts merged with the Schoolhouse Theater, there was an interim artistic director for 2 years, and then I took over the job and have been doing it since for the last 7 years.
Perfect, yeah. And for those of you that don't know, there was actually 2 theatres on the island when I first moved here. And the current building that you're in now was built when? Probably late 90s?
It was 1992.
Oh, early 90s,
yes,
okay.
It was built as the Pirate Playhouse.
Right.
Which used to be located across the street at what was the Schoolhouse Theater.
Okay.
It started, I think the Pirates started there in the late 60s, and then they stayed in that building until the early 90s, and the board of directors raised money, and they bought, or I think leased, the land that the theater's currently on and moved across the street, and the artistic director, Bob Cassioppo, knowing that...
Who, by the way, is now at the Florida Rep.
Theater, yes, he started that entire theater. It's very successful.
Yeah.
But he had asked his friend, J.T. Smith, to come down because they now had 2 theaters. They had the Schoolhouse, or the old Pirate Playhouse that became the Schoolhouse, and then the new theater across the street.
And what was the initial intention to close the one, or had they always intended to keep them both open?
They always intended to keep them both open. I think for some time it was hard to get traction in the Pirate Playhouse, which is why they wound up eventually moving to downtown Fort Myers. Gotcha.
And
then another company came in and took over the theater for a while. Then I think another company right after that, and it was us.
Then it was you.
Yes.
Fantastic. And for those that don't know, you can actually still see the old Schoolhouse Theatre in its former form. It was actually originally a school, and it is in the historic village, and you can check it out. It doesn't actually resemble much that it did when it was a theatre.
No, not at all. Because I think over the years, because it was the original schoolhouse from the
Mm-hmm.
1800s, so they're very limited in what they were allowed to do to change the structure. So they kept the structure the same, and that was the theater that the audience sat in. But the dressing rooms, the bathrooms, the offices were all added around the parameter of the original building.
Yeah,
so
and there was lots of little add-ons everywhere, wasn't there?
Add-ons and walls that you could kind of see through, and little breaks in them. And
It had some character.
it definitely did. Actually, it's one of the few theaters that I've ever worked at that I truly did think was haunted.
Really?
Well, you watch the Ghost Hunter television shows, and we've gotten a couple of calls at Big Arts,
Right.
at the Strauss Theater, to have them come in, and we did it 2 or 3 times, and they didn't find anything.
Right.
But I do recall a couple of times at the older theater, but 20 years ago, that we would go in because we left something at our dressing table.
Yeah.
That there was just a very eerie vibe.
Really?
Yeah, well,
really.
'cause
It
the
was sort of
history, too,
creepy, and
is-
it had all different levels, and you'd tuck around corners,
Because
and
at
it
that
was sort
point,
of-
I think it was about 110 years old.
Oh,
'cause it was
really?
from like 1890, I think, is when that building was constructed.
So why did it end up? Tell me why did it end up closing and the other one taken over?
Hurricane Katrina.
Oh, was that what it was?
Yeah, Hurricane Katrina came through, and unfortunately, because it was the original building from the 1890s,
Right.
there was too much damage, and they just couldn't rezone it for us to use as a theater anymore. And at that point, I think the building we're currently in, that is the Strauss Theater, was being managed by the community house.
That's right. Yeah.
The board of directors went to the community house, and they worked out a deal. So the community house theater, which is what it was called at the time, became the new schoolhouse theater.
Gotcha. Because when I moved here from Sanibel, in just a little background as to how we met, I moved here in 1999, and then I started with the graphic design company that you guys used, which was David and Lee of Horton and Horton Creative, or Sanibel Print and Graphics, there are many names, and David's a cartoonist on the island, still good friends with them today. And I worked there with the intention of starting my photography business, which I'd already had in England, and then started doing photography for the theatres.
And you worked on cruise ships as well.
I worked
right?
in cruise ships originally, yeah. So we did. I started doing the photography for both theatres, actually, for JT Smith, which is where I met you.
Yep.
Must have been in 2000, the year 2000, I'm guessing.
2000. I think we were doing Godspell at the time.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
remembering
Yeah.
correctly.
So 18 years ago. So yeah, we go back quite a way. And then
we're only 25.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
6 when we met.
So, tell me a bit about so the building now. It's a beautiful building. It stands up. It's a really elegant colonial style
very, very
building.
unique space.
Yeah, and it's. But tell us a bit about the actual theatre itself. That the visitor to the island that's not really going to see behind the scenes. I mean, how many employees do you have there? I mean, how many seats? How many?
Well, we are a small regional non-equity theater, so I would say for us that most of us wear at least 3 or 4 different hats in terms of what we do at the theater. But we have an operating staff of about 6 permanent year-round staff members, and then as far as our actors go, we're not a rep company, so every year we go to New York City, we have auditions, we do agent submissions as well, so the actors are not permanent employees. We'll fly them in for a month or 2 and house them, give them cars, and rehearse the shows, and then produce them.
And from what I understand, that's actually it was something I was going to ask you about. You're a non-union theatre, correct?
We are a non-union theater, but we recently, over the last couple of years, because of, and it's something I realized too, this being such a beautiful island, we are allowed to have equity contracts. We're only allowed a certain amount. They're called guest artist contracts, which we have stayed away from in the past because we are a small theater, and that can be very large salaries. But I learned the beauty of what Sanibel is in negotiations. Because most of our actors come from New York City. I think they're expecting, a foot of snow?
Yeah, for
in the next 2 days. So having them come down here and living here on Sanibel, we've been very lucky with some of our supporters that have extra condos that they rent out for weekly or monthly rentals. So if we're able to get a Broadway star to actually come down and star one of our musicals, we're able to put them up at a very nice condo.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
So maybe the salary isn't quite as much, but the perks.
Yeah, the perks are definitely
worth
there.
it.
And I think you've explained to me before, just like conversations we've had, although that the union and non-union thing can be an issue to some theatre goers, or it's actually worked in your benefit to a certain extent, where it's enabled you to do shows, if I'm correct, be seen in two different lights. Is it as a negative connotation that you're not a union theatre, or that you are, but for you and for the actors, it can be a benefit just for the fact that you can go into areas that you might not be able to do if you couldn't afford.
That is very true.
The extra salaries and the.
But you know what? It's been actually, you'd think, because there's a big difference. There is a big difference in terms of union and non-union. But myself and a lot of the other members of our staff, we were a part of the union when we were all professional performers.
Right.
So the way that we actually run the theater, in terms of just the fairness, towards the actors. I recall when I was younger, without saying, it was a theater in Pennsylvania, and it's very famous, but we were doing a big dance show, and literally part of the choreography was, leaps, but the leaps had to be coincided to jump over the humongous holes in the floor that you could see down about 20 feet into the basement.
So same problems, different theatre.
Well, but, from coming of age in theater, like myself and Victor Legaretta did, once you get your union card and you realize, oh, wow, you know what? Actually, there's a way to do this fair and a way to treat everybody well, that although we're a non-union theater, we operate as if we are equity in terms of our expectations and also valuing our performers.
Oh, I can vouch for that. Even the way that we, comparison with you doing photo calls for Florida Rep, which is, or you guys, it's done the same way.
They are an equity
They
theater
are an equity theatre, but you guys do exactly the same protocol. They have a break after the show. Right. They have food provided for them. So, yeah, I can vouch for that.
Because
they're treated just as well.
Acting is probably, I think, one of the most difficult careers as you get older, and you're doing very well, but you watch your other friends in other careers, like investment bankers or teachers, reach those life milestones of your first car and buying your first home, and that's something that it's not commonplace for somebody who's a struggling artist, right? Because you have a job for 6 months and then the show closes and you're out of work for a little while, so it's truly. A lot of times they would do it for free because of the love of what they, for sure, of how they feel towards theaters. For sure, you have to keep that in mind too, because sometimes they'll go the extra mile, and it may be unfair to ask. Do you know what I'm saying? Totally. And the other thing, of course, it allows you to bring in local talent, does it not? I mean, yes. There's people that definitely wouldn't have got a chance in the theatre, and I can think of several local people that have appeared year after year in different shows. Well, we're very lucky. It seems that this area of Florida, and even around the East Coast, that there are a lot of performers that after, you have a good 20 years if you're a professional dancer and you move on to different careers, that they have relocated down into this area. So there are Broadway performers. I think here on Sanibel there is a Tony-nominated choreographer. Really? Wow. Yes, she started Florida Gulf Coast Ballet. Oh, wow. Melinda Roy. Oh, yes. Melinda Roy, I think I've met her, yes. She was nominated for a Tony Award for Urban Cowboy. She did choreography on Broadway, and she lives right down Sandcap Road. Wow. So there are a lot of wonderful performers that have relocated down here, which makes it a lot easier on us because we don't have to fly them in. We don't have to house them. Right. We can use them on stage. Right. Fantastic. And a caliber that, is New York City. They've already proven themselves in the theater world. For sure. And that goes, I think I'm right in saying that goes back all the way through the house, though, doesn't it? I mean, from the set design to, I mean, you do have professional set designers, and you have... You can. I'm not sure if you still do. Do you still make all the sets right there, or are they bought in? I'm not sure. It depends how extreme the build is for the set. Over the years, though, we have expanded a lot of the things that we needed at the theater in order to enable us to do a lot of construction on site. So this last year, we actually have done everything on our own, from a built-in turntable onto our theater stage to completely redoing our light grid with new moving lights. And for those of you that don't know, if you've been into the theater, if you were to go backstage of the theater, it's probably every bit as big again. Backstage where there's carpentry spaces and we have an entire scenic shop, and a carpentry shop, and we have our costume shop as well. It isn't a cavernous backstage, but it is a 3-story building. So when there's not room to keep going back, we just go
up. Yeah,
Just
and
go
there's
up.
there's offices in that building where you wouldn't believe, isn't there?
Yes. Actually, they are called technical suites.
Technical
because
suites,
they are in kind of
excellent.
different areas.
And you have to be an acrobat to get to them.
The building was initially built as an equity theater. I think some of the guidelines have changed, so a lot of our stairs are actually ship ladders.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so we say stairs, but really it's a ladder.
That's funny.
It's theater, don't look behind the curtain. Famous
So
line from
smoke and
Wizard of
mirrors,
Oz.
is it? Smoke and mirrors, is that what it is?
Make them look over here while you're fixing that over there.
So what's the coming, the season ahead? What have you got coming up as far as?
Right now, we can't announce anything for it because we're in negotiations right now with different agents and also licensing companies.
So explain that process, just for those that don't know. So if you want to put on a show, you do what?
So everything that we do there is the licensing is held by one of the 4 major licensing companies in New York. Actually, there's more than 4, maybe 6 or 7. So we have to apply for permission, work out in terms of box office percentages and the amount of money that we pay. And then because we are doing our best to elevate the performers that we have coming down, for instance, we weren't able to do it this year. We're trying to work it out for maybe this season or next one. But we did a show called Louis and Ella last year.
Right.
And it was starring 2 very, very prolific Broadway performers.
Right.
And one of them, her name was Natasha Yvette Williams, is Natasha Yvette Williams. And we were trying to get her to come up this past season, and unfortunately in the negotiations she all of a sudden wasn't able to really go any further because she was put on hold.
Right.
And what that means usually is that there is a very big Broadway show that is considering you, so your agent just says, listen, these couple of months we're just going to say no to any offer. And actually she's now Becky in Waitress on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of the second
awesome.
leads.
Yeah,
and
very
it's
cool.
so exciting to go see them and be friends with them, to have worked with them here on Sanibel. And I guess also for a lot of our residents that are snowbirds that do go back up north, then they go to Broadway and they have a friend that's on the Broadway stage because, we are such a small community. We depend heavily on our volunteers.
Well, I remember at the old Schoolhouse Theatre, the old building, where you had like the Hall of Fame where there was all the headshots. Do you remember that? And there was probably 100 headshots, maybe more.
I would say more than that. We still have a lot of them in storage. Yeah, but our walls have become more of a showcase for all the wonderful photos that Mr. Nick Adams
well, thank you, sir.
taken for us over the years.
But I know that underneath there was several headshots that had where they are now. There was one of them was a Power Ranger, and some of them went on to some really big things.
Yeah.
So it's a great stomping ground for those people to go on to.
And we've actually, in the last couple of years that we've been Big Arts Strauss Theater, there was a show that we did, and you came out and did a lot of pictures for it. It was Ain't Misbehavin'.
Yeah.
And to one of those cast members, her name was Carla. She was just in the original revival of Color Purple on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
And now she is touring the nation in the Broadway National Tour as Suge Avery, and
Wow.
as well as one of the other cast members.
Wow.
So we've actually have had a bunch of our recent performers that have gotten that lucky break, and
do they want to come back and share the love later on in their career?
they sure do, and we'll have them back anytime they would like. Yes.
That's awesome. And then who picks the shows? Is it your job to pick the shows, or is it more of what's available, the budget? Or is it a collaboration of people?
It is definitely a collaboration. The end decision is left up to me and the executive director as well.
Right.
And a lot of it is just is budgeting. We like to have a very diverse season.
Right.
So there are certain shows that we know are not going to sell as many tickets as others.
Right.
So there's times that, we just need to work out how many people we think are going to come, so that way we can offer a very serious drama that may not appeal to as many people as a comedy would.
Right.
So we have to figure out the right planning for that. And
so
if
the
it all fits
balance
together,
of creative and really,
yes.
compared
because
with,
as you know, here we are on Sanibel, and it's a very seasonal island. So we have about 7 to 8 months to really kind of get the bang for our buck and get as many people in.
Right.
So to have a season that is offered that can appeal to everyone, maybe not every show, but that we'd be able to get the interest of most of the island, we do our best to do that.
Yeah, and Bobby's background, I think, is musical and dancing, and same as Victor, and I think some of the shows that you put on over Christmas are like unbelievable, and everybody should go and see one.
Our annual Christmas spectacular, Christmas celebrations.
Yeah, it's just fun. It's just good fun for everybody that goes, and yeah.
Well, and that's another thing too, that during the holiday season, that Sanibel has so many visitors that come down, and especially during Christmas time, all the families come up to visit the grandmother, grandfather, aunts, or uncles. That during that particular time of year is when we want to have a show. And I refer to it as a show that the parents are not going to have to be in the lobby with the children.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes when they bring the little kids to a serious drama, there's always one parent, because the little kid doesn't want to sit, that doesn't get to see that show. So Christmas is about just an all-out celebration, upbeat music, lots of dance numbers, beautiful costumes. That way everyone from the littlest all the way up to the oldest adult in the family will find something they really enjoy.
So we got kids that are now 13, 14, and 19, and I think all three of them remember Dominic the Donkey.
Ah, yes.
And can still
the
recite
classic Christmas tune, Dominic the Donkey.
Can still recite it.
Hee-haw, hee-haw.
Exactly.
And that actually has been, I think that was in our Christmas show 3 years ago.
Oh, really?
Well, we had Victor Legaretta.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he came back. Yeah,
that is his song.
Yeah. Did he
Forever.
write?
Well, he didn't write it.
He did it.
He did it,
that's
and
right.
he's pretty well known for it. So
Yeah.
we are lucky enough to have him come back to the island to perform for us for a Christmas show. Dominic is
Dominic.
in it. Yes.
Dominic made a comeback. That's awesome. Okay, and then anything you could tell us about the theatre? I mean, like that they wouldn't know about behind the scenes. I mean, I know, like you said, you wear a lot of hats. I mean, like, give me an example in a day of what the types of different tasks that you have to do as an employee of a small theatre.
Well, in addition to being the artistic director, I'm also the general manager of the theater. I share a job, which is volunteer coordinator with our box office manager. So she is box office manager, volunteer coordinator.
Right.
For the last two shows, I've been the costumer as well.
Oh, wow.
Sound engineer.
You were doing sound. Do they have a dedicated sound guy anymore or no? Or
we do.
You do?
We do. But at this point now, because the shows we're doing are getting a lot more complex, we're starting to look into using more union technicians.
Gotcha.
So that way, when we have new soundboards, things of that nature, we have somebody that's already trained in it, so we don't have to figure it all.
For that particular show?
For that particular show.
Gotcha. Because there can be, I mean, if you're not familiar with behind the scenes, I am a little bit because of being a photographer, but there can be literally hundreds, probably almost thousands of light cues during a show.
Oh, yes.
I mean, constantly changing.
I've been the light board operator as well. And there was a show that I remember that it was a wonderful lighting designer. His name is David Sexton. And he liked to have a lot of cues, but it was well worth it. But there were times that we'd get to parts in the show that I knew I had to count really fast to 11. And there's a little button that you press to make the light cues go,
right,
where I would literally be pressing them that quick.
Really?
Through the course of a number. And you just have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by the end of the show, you have gone through 998 light cues.
It is absolutely incredible.
Well, and that's,
the work that goes into it behind the scenes.
And it's the things that I think a lot of audiences don't even realize, how you are manipulating their eye to go to a certain part of the stage. And there could be 20 light cues that are slowly fading to just make them, they're unaware of it. Right. But you are actually taking them on a visual journey with the lighting cues. And that takes a lot of work.
For sure. And I can vouch for that as a photographer. I can tell instantly if the light guy has done a great job.
Yeah.
I don't need to add anything. It's just like the guy standing on a mark. We can hit the shot, and it's just like, wow, that's impressive. And to me, I appreciate that. And it's just like, these guys are so detail orientated. I just wish everybody could see how much work goes into that behind the scenes.
There's another thing too that people really don't realize, that at the theater, like I said, we are a minimal staff, that normally a theater will have a spotlight operator.
Right.
We do not have a spotlight operator. We actually have digital moving lights.
Okay.
So they're actually programmed into the light cues. So when you press a certain when you press go for a certain cue, as the actor is moving, it's actually going through about 58 different light cues as the lights are moving themselves.
Incredible. So you have to follow the light rather than the other way around.
Yes, it means that if you go a little faster, you're gonna be in the dark. But it's a dance.
Right.
Really, what it is. I mean, although it's just staging, if they're singing a song or doing a scene,
And
but
it's making the most of what you got.
Yep.
And the resources that you got.
And it looks absolutely beautiful
Yeah,
because instead
for
of just
sure.
having one spotlight, we can use 8 different moving lights in different directions.
Yeah.
So, it just gives you that beautiful blue hue and
Right.
be able to follow them along where they think there's 8 different spotlight operators, but oh no, one
Yep.
computer, one
Yep.
light board
Yep.
operator.
And definitely, if you haven't had the chance to go to the theatre, it's definitely a must-do while you're here. It's an incredible layout. It's a horseshoe shape, so there's really no bad seat in the house.
No, not at all. And one of the cool things, because it's a thrust stage where there's audience on 3 different sides, it gives
There's
it.
a name for that?
Yes, there
I
you
didn't
go.
know
It's
that.
called the thrust stage.
Thrust stage. I didn't know
stage.
that. Okay.
But I think what makes it unique is most theaters are a proscenium stage. That's when the entire audience is just in front.
Right.
And they are not on the side. But because the show actually spills out into the audience in a sense, it gives it a more of immersive quality.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, shows that we did Into the Woods, where we actually extended the set to kind of come around and envelop the audience as well.
So you're using the stairways and you're turning to different parts of the audience and then making that the front part of the
'cause
presentation.
As you know, too, we have different performance areas in the theater. That's not just the stage. So we call them satellite stages. So we can easily have a scene that takes place in the back corner of the theater, and that will be satellite stage B. And then we have
Which you wouldn't know was there until the light cue
Until
came
the
on.
light cue came
yeah.
on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But
yeah.
what it does, it just in theater, it's all about listening to a story and believing it.
Mm-hmm.
And what better way to take an audience on that journey with you than for them to feel as if they are part of the gang.
Right,
They're,
for sure.
They're one of the friends. They're there in the thick of it with the actors, and I
sure.
think that adds a lot to the experience.
Well, and I think the when you're in the theatre and you can watch the people that you're facing as an actor, or if you can see their faces light up and glow, just the fact that you're 2 inches or
I know,
a foot away from somebody singing, you see these kids that get really
It's an awesome experience, but a little scary, I think, for some people that aren't used to
yeah,
that style.
you're
Because,
close.
like I
It's
said,
intimate.
most stages, the audience is just in the front. So by the time the lights hit you, you only see the first row.
Yeah.
In our theater, you can see everybody.
Everybody,
Yes.
yeah.
All eyes on you. There's no hiding. Sorry.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, have you got any funny stories to share about anything that's happened at the theatre?
Oh boy, I mean, there's a bunch. Some are funny in hindsight.
Right.
At the time, maybe weren't so funny.
Yeah.
One of the typical things, and it's not all the time, but here on Sanibel, we are a basic wildlife preserve, and
Right,
we got a
for
lot
sure.
of critters running around. So there can be a couple performances where we play the game called Chase the Frog on the stage.
Really?
And try to catch the frog while you're performing a dance number so the audience won't see it.
Did they have tickets, these frogs?
No. They are uninvited guests. They're cute, but they wind up becoming the star of the number. No matter who's up there singing, whether it's a Broadway star or not, that frog starts hopping across the stage. The audience starts
Does it have to be
applauding.
rainy season, or they'll just come in
Oh
anytime?
no, they'll just come in. Because we are a theater and the door opens all the
open for
time,
everybody.
so it can happen. Another funny thing with our island residents, our little critters. Most of, like I said, our performers are from New York City,
Yeah.
so they only know what a gecko is from the Geico commercial.
Right.
So there's a lot of times that we have to sit down and have a talk with them and say, no, they don't have teeth. They cannot bite you. So like, there's a little dinosaur chasing me. There's hundreds of
There's
them.
a 3-inch lizard.
Yeah, no, you're safe. You're safe. They're not going to hurt you.
That's funny. So I know we touched on it a little bit, but you said we said about like the day in the life of a director. You said you can go through many different hats during the day. Just give me another idea. So your day would typically start. So I know what have you got on now? Now you're going through the technical part.
Yes, we're in Tech Week.
And explain what that is.
Dames at Sea. Tech Week, we have a 2-week rehearsal period.
Mm-hmm.
So the first week and a half we use to block the show, teach the choreography, teach all the music, and then 5 days before we open is what we call tech. That's where we start to add all the other elements, costumes, lighting, sound, and then, of course, there's a whole show behind the show, like you were saying.
Right.
What you see on stage is facilitated by everybody else running around in the back and pushing on the sets and helping with the quick changes.
Right.
So Tech Week is a time.
And you're rehearsing with wet paint and unfinished sets and all the rest of it. Yeah.
We actually, though, we've sort of worked out a really good schedule that we don't overlap too much.
Okay.
Meaning, there's always every show we are doing a show at night and we are rehearsing during the day, which can be some long days.
Right.
But we've worked it into the schedule that we have a couple more days that we are not running a show and rehearsing a show.
Gotcha.
Which allows us to get the setup a little bit quicker, which allows our actors to have just a little bit more time, because when you're in a rehearsal space in front of the mirrors, we have rehearsal prop furniture things there, and we tape off the floor so they know where walls are, things of that nature. But there's one thing being in that space, and then actually if the play takes place in a mansion, you actually get to go to that mansion because it is the set. And that takes a little time for acclimation too. So we've been able to work it out that we've been able to get a little bit more time with that.
So you want to have that set finished so that you can really block it out and you can actually rehearse with that actually affects the performance?
Yeah, I think it does. It definitely does. And I think it affects the audience's experience in the first couple of performances as well.
Right.
In terms of just something more solid. And actually one of the best compliments that I can,
it's been a touring company.
Is this a company that you brought in? Where are they going next? And the fact of the matter is we start from scratch. We find the actors. We do the costumes, we build the sets, and there is a lot of times at closing a show you get a little tear in your eye because of all the hard work, because we don't have shows that run in the summer. So how we're able to accomplish all of that so quickly is, a show that could be going on in January of the following year, we are starting production in June.
And I think people won't realize that there's actually a lot of people behind the scenes that are only there for the pre-run, getting the show ready. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
As far as set design and all the rest of it, are you still outsourcing set design, or is that?
No, that's all done in-house. Our technical director, who is also our scenic and lighting designer, is Adam Trummel.
Okay.
And he's also somebody who wears at least 6 or 7 different hats. But our last show that we did was a show called Noises Off, which was the interior 2-story set on a turntable. The set itself all had to rotate. So that was a big undertaking.
Technical undertaking. Yeah.
So we have a team of people. There's a professional union called IATSE.
Right.
That it's a professional stagehand union, and because of the wonderful theaters like Barbara B. Mann and the artists in Naples, that they actually have enough work that there's a lot of people that are a part of that technical union that live here in Fort Myers and also in Naples. So when they're available, we will hire them up and bring them out to Sanibel. And they will help us get that all together.
I know I've seen behind the scenes when you are in rehearsals, and it's just like a mass of wiring and people that are all trying to do different things in that same space, and you're trying to scratch a promotional shot out of one wall that's finished.
Right. You can only be in about 5 feet.
5 feet.
Otherwise, I'll see the painter.
Set up a special lighting cue just for that one scene.
It really is that line from Wizard of Oz, don't look behind the curtain.
Right.
Just keep your eyes right here.
It definitely is an awesome theatre, and everybody should definitely go. What about if you had, now this is an obvious one, we're going to ask everybody this question, but for you this is an obvious answer, but I mean, if you had a rainy day on Sanibel, where would you go? Of course you're going to say the theatre.
Go to the Strauss Theatre.
Of course, which is the obvious one, so do that.
Yes.
Apart from that, have you got anything that you would recommend to do on Sanibel or surrounding areas? It doesn't have to be.
Oh, gosh. I mean, a rainy day, I would have to say any of the fantastic restaurants here. I mean, I'm a restaurant person. Being a professional actor, my other career was professional waiter in New York City.
There
So
you
I
go.
truly
Goes hand in
appreciate
hand.
fine food and good service.
Hey, so on that note, what would be any recommendations? Where do you
gosh.
like to hang out? I mean, I've got a few favorites myself, but what about you?
You know, I have a lot of favorites. I would have to say my new favorite, though, is the Blue Coyote.
Yes.
I don't know
okay.
if you've been
I've
there.
never had the chance because there was one in Fort Myers, and I've been meaning to go there.
And that's a
meaning to go
private
there.
one, so you have to
Yes.
actually belong to go, where this one is open to the public.
Oh, this one is open to the public.
open to the
And it's
public.
where the old beach view.
Yes.
But it's not called that now, is it? Where is it called? It's called Sanibel Golf Club, I think.
It's changed its name, and it's something
Yeah,
like
I'll
that.
put
It's
it in.
not
I'll put the
Beachview.
accurate description
Yeah.
in the show notes. But it's so it's right next to it, and it used to be. I don't know what it used to be, but
Over the years, that building has been a couple of different restaurants, but I think they really kind of hit their stride with opening the new Blue Coyote. If you go there, get the mushroom risotto. It is incredible.
okay, that's it. That's a recommendation. We got to do it.
And
We
there's a
gotta do
couple
it.
other places too. Traders, fantastic.
Traders. I love Traders. Absolutely
in the
love it.
second month it was open, that was about 19 years ago, I was their busboy.
No way.
Yes, I worked there for
No.
the lunch shifts.
Really?
Yes, and then
Really?
and then the schedule came too busy at the theater, so then I moved over to Gilligan's,
Yes, which is now
the Island Cow.
Island Cow. Yeah, I remember it well. And we got a friend, Mike Patnode, who's the chef at Timbers, and
Yeah.
Traders. I'm sorry,
Traders.
and it's we're big fans. I mean, the food is absolutely phenomenal, isn't it? The seafood and the
it's-
steaks.
it's unbelievable.
It's definitely a treat meal if we're going out for a meal.
And seeing it when it first started, it was wonderful then. But the evolution of what Traders has become.
Oh my!
And the you can't even get in there during 5 o'clock time between the bar and the happy hour, and all the tables are filled.
I know, it's incredible, and they got a huge shop in there where you can buy all, and it's not it's not just a side thought. There's some really cool stuff in that.
Yeah,
store.
well, from what I remember, it was a while back, but the reason that I was very excited to work there when I did was because it had just opened, but the idea was the people that started and own it are the people that own Chico's.
Right. Okay.
And they had traveled the world, and they had so many wonderful pieces. And it wasn't so much. I think now it's more clothing and jewelry and things
Right,
of that
right,
nature.
right.
But when they first opened, there was a lot of furniture.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Beautiful pieces of mahogany and statues and gorgeous chairs that actually the people that were eating in the restaurant would be sitting in the furniture that was for sale. So it was like
Oh wow! What
it
a
was
cool
like this
concept. Yeah.
entire like a hug of all this beautiful things that the people who owned Chico's had collected over the years.
Wow, that's interesting. That's something I
Yeah.
didn't know. And they've actually just opened up another Traders.
Traders
What's it
2.
called, Laurie? Traders 2?
Traders
it's over
2.
in the Villages.
The Village, and I've been there. Another fantastic
We
job.
went in
Yeah.
there to Laurie and I went in there to check it out. It's only opened a month ago, maybe,
Yeah,
and
it's
it
very
looks
new.
absolutely fantastic.
Bartender's fantastic. It's the bartender wasn't quite a bartender. It's a mixologist.
Oh, really? Oh,
Where
very
they
fancy.
actually
They do
they make
cocktails and,
they make their own syrups and things like that. So their cocktails are truly unique to Traders too.
Wow.
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, it's
I
kinda
didn't
neat.
know. So is it open like a bar too, or is it more just of a? Is it more of a?
It's a
eating
bar
restaurant?
and a restaurant. The
Right.
bar itself, I think, has about 11 or 10 seats. It's not a very big bar.
Okay.
But it's deceiving when you go in there. It looks like every shop is very tiny, but it's actually just the way the exterior of the building is constructed. And when you walk in, it's actually a pretty spacious place with beautiful artwork on the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if the food at Traders 1 is anything to go by, I'm sure it's going to be a
it's-
resounding success.
It's
you know?
a win-win. And then you also have Thistle Lodge.
Thistle Lodge, fantastic.
Beach. And
Yeah.
sit there and watch the sunset as you're having a filet mignon and
Yeah,
escargot.
it doesn't get much better.
and,
It's
yeah,
beautiful,
no.
isn't it? Yeah, it's very good food too. Hey, 3 things to do on Sanibel, like your top. If you could say 3 things to do, what would it be?
I would say, there's so many awesome things to do on here. I would say the things that I do when I have family and friends visiting, because as you know, you get so busy on
Right,
Sanibel.
for sure.
My view of the water is normally the causeway in my car driving over and going
and you
back
have to pinch yourself and say, "Yeah, I'm really lucky to be doing this." don't you?
Definitely.
I do it all the time.
I used to go underneath the East River to get to Midtown Manhattan to work, and now I see dolphins on the way to work. So
Doesn't get any
it
better
doesn't
than
get any
that.
better than that. Tarpon Bay Explorers for kayaking through the mangroves.
Excellent, yeah.
Is an excellent way to spend in the day, and just with the wildlife and all the beautiful birds.
See, that's something I've never done, and I should do it because that's back in Tarpon Bay, which we've been in there by powerboat, but I've never actually kayaked
you can
back
go
in there.
right into the mangroves. It's absolutely beautiful, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure there's
It's a little bit of work. Well, because if you're going to take the entire path, I think it's about 1.5 miles.
Okay.
It's slow go, and you're there to kind of absorb the scene. So it's not a race or anything like that. I think last year I brought my nephew along, he's 12 now. He was 11 then. I wound up doing a lot of the paddling because halfway through we kind of gave up.
All right, yeah, that's one. That's definitely good.
Andy Rossi Lane.
Andy, it's iconic.
Out in Captiva, for lunch at the Mucky Duck, and then walk up and down and see all the beautiful art galleries. And then
what Bobby's not telling you is he hasn't got any recommendations for parking because the parking's not very good.
No, not really. That's why it's good to go to one of the restaurants, and then you could take a little stroll afterwards, or the Bubble Room.
Yes, for sure.
Having one of their desserts, that's kind of an iconic Sanibel Captiva tradition.
These huge cakes.
And then we were saying during season we get so busy. Another favorite thing of mine to do, and it's something that I didn't discover till about 5 years ago, but there is a wonderful resort on West Gulf Drive called Mitchell's Sandcastles.
Yes, okay.
And I discovered that off-season, they have little beach cabins that, off-season is not as expensive as season. So every year, me and the rest of my family, we rent one of the little beach cottages.
Interesting.
And come over here to Sanibel for a week. Good to know.
And correct me if I'm wrong, is that on West Gulf?
It's on West Gulf Drive. And I think it might be one of the oldest resorts that's here on Sanibel. It's been around since the early 60s, I think.
It definitely is. And I was actually driving past it yesterday. I was taking some pictures for a company yesterday, and it's still got it looks like it's not set. It looks like the old font from those era.
It is the classic Sanibel beachside cottage, and it's one of the few places I've ever vacationed that when you walk outside the front door of your little cottage, your feet are in the sand.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
It's right on the ocean there.
Yeah, awesome.
That's probably my all-time favorite thing to do when we actually have the time to go and do some stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, that's great. I'm trying to think of anything else that we need to give us. Let me know about what's the rest of the season looking like, because I'm not sure how much you got left at the theatre.
We have 2 shows left for the season. So on this coming Thursday, which is March 8th, we are opening up Dames at Sea.
Okay.
Dames at Sea is a classic Broadway musical. There's probably, I'd say, between 15 and 17 numbers, and all of them are very big, extravagant tap numbers.
Oh, cool.
We are getting all of our costumes. We have a costume designer that works for a company called Costume World.
Yeah.
So we actually were lucky enough to get the Broadway costumes for the show.
Oh, perfect.
And also this is one of those rare shows where we're able to reconfigure the theater, get a little more space, so we actually have a live band for the show as well.
Oh, great stuff.
Yeah,
great stuff. Have you got any returning cast members? Anybody I'd know?
Yes, actually, he had moved to New York City probably about 5 or 6 years ago and got a job at a huge theater called Goodspeed Opera House. And his name is John Ramsey.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
He's done a couple of shows for us and has been lead. And he went on to get his equity card. But now that we do guest artist contracts, we were able to get him back into the fray.
There you go. There's a bonus. Yeah.
And then we have a lot of new faces as well. This particular show, like I said, is a very, very big dance show.
Right.
So, a lot of the shows that we've done in the past are plays, and the casts are a little bit more varied, where this one, the energy and the flexibility physically that is needed for the performance, there are some younger Broadway actors that we found the last time we had our New York call.
Okay.
So you
do, sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
You do a call in New York to get your talent?
Every year.
Okay. And is that just put on by... Explain how that works. That's every regional theatre would go to a bit. Do they get all the actors and theatres to one place? Or?
They have things like that. Unfortunately, it's hard for us to do that because it all happens within the month of January, February, or March.
When you're busy.
When we're very busy. Right. So every year, usually in May or June, there's a national trade paper called Backstage. We take an ad out. We list what our season is, what the people are that we're looking for in terms of characters.
Yeah.
And then we rent a big rehearsal studio in New York. Actually, we rent two, one a holding room and one for the actual audition. And we spend a week in New York, and we see as many performers as we can.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. And then, so after this show, then what do you go on to?
And then we have one more show, and actually it's coming to us from the Theater Conspiracy. It's directed by Bill Taylor, and it is called Grounded.
Okay.
It's a little more of a drama than a musical theater comedy, and it is about it is a true story about a woman that was a fighter pilot in Desert Storm, and she gets pregnant. So she gets grounded, meaning she can't fly missions in Desert Storm because she's pregnant. So she gets transferred to Las Vegas.
Okay.
And her job there for the government is operating military drone fighters.
Wow. Okay.
So it's about the juxtaposition of during the day fighting terrorism,
Right.
and then going home to just a normal suburban life with a baby and a husband.
Wow.
And how those two jobs and those two lifestyles work well together, and also how hard it is to come to terms with, oh wow, I just took out something in the middle of Iraq that she's watching on a video screen, and then coming home and trying to put all of that destruction aside so she can give the time and the love to her new child.
So a newish show that's been written in the last 10 years? I'm
No,
guessing?
I would say it was written about 2 years ago. It was produced. It'll definitely be the Sanibel debut, and they're going to do it for 2 performances in Fort Myers, but it was done at Joe's Pub in New York City last year, and it was directed by Julie Taymor, and it was starring Anne Hampton-Callaway.
Oh, wow.
Oh, Anne Hathaway, excuse me.
Anne Hathaway, okay.
Anne Callaway's a cabaret singer that night.
It's
Not a good role for her, really.
Awesome. Okay, well that's cool. And then for next season, you can't say because you're in negotiations.
We're in negotiations.
When will we find out about next season? Where can people find out? Where would they go to find out for next season?
Well, you can always check our Facebook page, which is Big Arts, Strauss Theater, as well as our website, which is bigarts.org. But the season should be announced by the middle, actually we're here in March, so in a couple of weeks.
A couple of weeks.
It's going to be a very diverse season.
So tell me, when does the official start of next season start? Is that going to be in October? What sort of?
Normally, it's between the beginning of November and near the end of November. You know, being a seasonal island, it all depends when holidays fall, because you try to judge when, the snowbirds and the people that are only here for 6 or 7 months, when they're going to come down.
For sure.
And every year, it can change up a little bit. What we're aiming for this year is a show before Thanksgiving.
Gotcha. Okay.
2 weeks leading up. And then Thanksgiving, and then after that are all the wonderful island celebrations. We usually don't run a show while Luminary's going on.
Gotcha.
Another amazing thing to do.
Exactly,
on Sanibel.
Luminary. If you haven't done
beautiful.
Luminary, you should definitely check that out.
So anything we do for Christmas, usually try to start that in the middle of December, and then once that happens, we're off and running.
And when do you close this year?
This year, our final show is, if I'm not mistaken, April 22nd.
And that's open to change sometimes, or no?
You know what? Actually, not normally.
No,
Just
okay.
because we're talking about negotiations with licensing, and a lot of that has to do also with the dates that we would like to perform a show. There could be a theater in Sarasota that wanted to do that show too. And
I understand. Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, cool. Well, I think we got everything. You can. I've got one more thing for you, Bobby.
Okay.
This is something you got to try for me.
Okay.
We have a conch shell.
I'd like you to, I'm scared.
Give that a blow for me. Because we are here on Sanibel.
All right.
And we're an island. We are an island place, yeah?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it therefore goes, I know you're from New York, but you should be able to blow one of these because you are an islander. You are an honorary islander. I've got one here too. I'm
going to get my inner trumpeter inside ready.
Okay. I've got a feeling he can do it.
I did it.
Round of applause for Bobby Logue. I can't beat that. So that's
Did anybody else?
Not yet. Episode number 1, but there's time yet.
There you go. Pitch-wise, it wasn't perfect, but there you go.
We'll put some rehearsal in that one. All right, man. Well, thanks very much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome
Thank you,
speaking
thank
to you.
you.
It's awesome to see you. Good friend of mine for the last 15, 20 years. So good to start off with Bobby.
And come see Dames at Sea at the Strauss Theater. Box office phone number is 239-297. Oh, excuse me. I was just about to give you my phone number. 239-472-6862. Janet will be the one answering the call, and tell her that Bobby sent you.
One more time with the number there, Bobby.
239-472-6862 at the Strauss Theater, Big Hearts.
That's not Bobby's personal line. So thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Have a good
Thanks
one.
for having
Cheers.
me.
All right.